Like the cars and the tracks are very similar. And there we go. We got our YouTube stream mic working again. YouTube stream in advance. I am so sorry for the delay. We had mic issues. I'm so sorry, but thank you all in advance for tuning in. If you guys want to tune into the YouTube stream, The Sergio Show on YouTube. Now, to catch up the YouTube stream, we're talking about Toyota and F1. As I was saying before I could finally get the YouTube stream running again, I have a game on my phone called Monoposto, which is basically a fantasy Formula One game. The cars look the same. The track configurations are very much on par with their real-life counterparts. The only main difference is how it handles the lack of official F1 licensing and the settings, which are, they could be a little bit better, honestly. But from there on out, it's a pretty legit game, if you ask me. I actually have a lot of fun with it. For people on my YouTube stream, you'll know that I do Formula S, which is supposed to be my fantasy F1 league. And I have Toyota as a full-fledged team. So I guess in a way you could say that Formula S kind of predicted this, but not really, to be honest. Like this is just a little side tangent that I decided to go on, mainly because I think it's exciting to see Toyota coming back to Formula One. Now, in my humble opinion, as we're here to talk about racing on here on Grand Prix Talk, what I think about this deal, and I'm willing to be talked out of it also, I think it's both a pro. There's a lot more pros than cons for Toyota involved in this. I think the big one is, of course, Toyota coming back to F1, but also the fact that they'll be able to lean in on Haas to kind of maybe pursue a future Formula One opportunity in the future. The downside is Formula One continues to be extremely expensive for any big team to actually come in. And with the whole Andretti Cadillac fiasco that we had earlier in the year, it basically kind of shows a little bit of stubbornness from the Formula One management, where basically, or whoever it was that rejected Andretti Cadillac, basically they're willing for those current 10 teams to bring in whoever they want, right? I mean, for all I know, they could bring in some sketchy sponsor, as Haas did with Uralkali, and we'll be fine. But bringing in an 11th team, nah, dude, that's where we draw the line, apparently. But yeah, that's my one downside. It's just like you really could have actually allowed Toyota to bring in like a full-fledged team. But then again, let's be honest, Formula One continues to be extremely expensive, and Toyota looking like they want to come in some way or form. I guess this is the best way. And you know what? Everybody wins. I'm very excited to see Toyota back on the field, even if it is just through a partnership with Haas. By the way, for anyone who isn't already aware, we are expecting to see Toyota on the grid this weekend at the Formula One United States Grand Prix, as the paint scheme for Haas F1 this weekend was revealed. So actually, I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to see if I can get my YouTube stream to see it as well. Let's see. So the images were just posted to Instagram earlier today. So I'll share my screen here with my you describe it as best I can. It's basically the typical Haas paint scheme, but now on the side pod you see like a blue eagle and red in the background where it says Haas on the side pod, and then a slightly different front wing. And then of course Toyota Gazoo Racing now featured in the mirrors and in the rear wing, as we saw earlier when the announcement first came up that Haas and Toyota were partnering up. But either way, very exciting stuff. I'm the Haas F1 team principal had a say in it because he is Japanese, so I'm willing to bet that he also had a little bit of help in bringing in Toyota. His name is Ayo Komatsu. I hope I said that correctly. If I didn't, I am so sorry. But Ayo Komatsu, he's the team principal of Haas, and I'm willing to bet that his involvement also had something to do with bringing in Haas to F1. And not Haas, Toyota with Haas to F1. Very exciting stuff, honestly. So I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be talking more about the United States Grand Prix here shortly. We first need to come back here stateside now that we've traveled to Japan and Germany and all that, to bring in, our dogs at Toyota. Let's come back stateside and let's talk about some buffoonery that occurred in the NASCAR Xfinity Series earlier this weekend. Pure buffoonery, pure stupidity. I'm sorry, it's true. I'll try to break this down as best I can, okay? Because honestly, I don't know how else to describe it other than the way it is. It was a mess, all right? So NASCAR had a lot of racing this weekend at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, specifically on the Roval configuration. In the case of the Xfinity Series, it was decided in the round of 8, and the same can be said for the Cup Series. But for this one, we need to talk about the Xfinity Series race at Charlotte Motor Speedway, because that one was going pretty darn smoothly until the last few laps. It was a mess, if you ask me. So I'll actually bring this up, and I'll try to describe it as best I can. So I want to clarify, by the way, that yes, we had big names like Shane Van Gisbergen racing in the race at the Roval for the Xfinity Series as well, and we had a pretty good showdown at the end. We honestly really did. Coming into the race, like I said, this was a playoff elimination race, so he had all the recipes. He had the recipe for a really good finish here. So now that let's break this down. Okay, so 2 laps to go. Our dog Parker Kligerman in the number 48 Chevrolet. He's leading. It looks like he's on his way to a first NASCAR Xfinity Series race win. And I want to point out that Parker Kligerman will be retiring from the Xfinity Series at the end of the season. So, hey, that's a pretty good way to go out in style, right? With your first race win. And Sam Mayer, I believe that's how I say it. I've mistaken it for Meyer. But Sam Mayer is running in second. AJ Allmendinger is running in third. All 3 of these drivers are playoff drivers in the Xfinity Series. So with 2 laps to go, we got a pretty significant wreck. Car number 42, actually, not only did this dude hit the wall, he was in them tire barriers. He was, I don't know how else to say it, he was deep inside them tire barriers. Look, that was kind of funny. Anyway, number 42, yeah, he was buried inside them tire barriers, honestly. That obviously was going to bring out the caution immediately in any sane world. But no, that's not quite what happened. NASCAR instead decided to wait and wait and wait oh so patiently to bring out the caution once Parker Kligerman was just a few feet out from the finish line. The flagman had that darn white flag in the air and waving. Like, that was it. That was going to be the final lap. And the caution lights come on right as we get, like, if you watch the YouTube replay of this, you will see Parker Kligerman coming around the final corner, the flagman waving the white flag, and then as the camera follows Parker Kligerman from one side of the track to the other, once Parker goes to the other side of the track, you see them caution lights come on, and at that point, it's so over. It's done. It's not, and not the race itself. I mean the integrity of things. It's literally gone bad. So NASCAR literally waited until Parker was just before the start-finish line. It really does feel like race manipulation, in my humble opinion. It's so bad. It was such a whack call, if I'm being honest. That was not good. So this effectively, now how the rules work is that if a caution comes out before the white flag, the race will go into overtime. And guess what? The race did go into overtime because NASCAR had determined that at the time of caution, number 48, Parker Kligerman, did not take the white flag before the caution lights came on, before the caution button was pushed. Whatever they want to come up with, it didn't quite happen. So Parker Kligerman had to fight for his life, or in this case, his playoff contention, in an overtime finish where it was an overtime finish, which is 2 laps to go, and they got to get to the white flag first before another caution comes out. Huge bummer, honestly. And spoiler alert, Parker Kligerman did not walk away with the race win. No, he got a tire damage, and he was falling down the order quick. This dude went from first to fourth in the span of 1 lap. Sam Mayer would go on to take the race win, and he would advance to the next round of the playoffs. AJ Allmendinger finished second, and Shane Van Gisbergen did finish a respectable 3rd place in the Xfinity Series race. But man, Parker Kligerman got robbed of that one. He really did. He ended up finishing in 6th place at the end of it. Also, I want to point out that I made a mistake. Shane Van Gisbergen, he finished 3rd. He was not in the playoffs anymore, that I understand. So yeah, huge mistake from NASCAR's part. And Parker Kligerman, this dude got screwed out of a race win, honestly. There's no other way to put it. This dude really did get screwed out. And I think NASCAR really has to have a meeting with itself about how they're going to move forward from this one, because this has happened time and time and time again. It's unacceptable. But anyway, on the note of NASCAR, right after the break, we will be talking about the Cup Series briefly. We're going to touch upon the Roval race results for the Cup Series and preview the Eliminator 8. And after that, later on in the show, we'll talk about the history of the United States Grand Prix. But first, here's a little bit of I Need to Catch My Breath. So I'll play you a little bit of Biba Doobie because I have not had enough of her music ever since I went to her concert at the end of the month of September. So here's my favorite song from her, 10:36 on Grand Prix Talk. Stay with us. We will be right back. Chat, I am so sorry about the technical issues. I really don't know what happened about the mic. But anyway, thanks for tuning in advance. We will be right back here shortly. realized I didn't unmute myself on the live stream. I'm so sorry, chat. This has been weird. Okay, so as I was saying, on Sunday, October 20th, NASCAR will be racing in Las Vegas, Nevada for the South Point 400. This will be the first of 3 races in the NASCAR Cup Series round of 8 playoffs. The following race after that will be the Straight Talk Wireless 400 on Sunday, October 27th at Homestead Miami Speedway, which should be the finale. I don't understand, but it is nice to see it closer to the finale. Hey, it beats the springtime race that they had. Anyway, so both of these races will go live at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Both of them on NBC, which is Channel 4 for us here in Los Angeles. Please check your local listings for NBC. Anyway, so those are our 2 races. The third race, which is also the final race of the round of 8, will be on Sunday, November 3rd at 11 a.m. Pacific time. By then, I believe we actually would have brought the clock back, if I'm not wrong. Daylight savings time will have ended that weekend. Let me double check actually, because I do believe, yes, it does end that day. So I think after that, we're not going to be seeing Pacific Daylight Time for a while. So Pacific Standard Time at 11 a.m. Pacific on NBC Channel 4. So yeah, that is on Sunday, November 3rd, the Xfinity 500 at Martinsville Speedway. That will be on NBC Channel 4 on Sunday, November 3rd. So our 3 races, Vegas, Miami, Martinsville. We are in for some pretty good racing. These 1.5 milers have been excellent this past season. Of course, we have those insane photo finishes at Atlanta and at and Kansas, which now hosts the closest finish in NASCAR history. So these 1.5 milers should be in for some great racing. But Martinsville, oh man, these short track racing, Brody, welcome to the show, man. It's good to hear from you again. This is on my YouTube stream, by the way. Welcome to the show, bro. Thank you for tuning in. As I was saying, the Xfinity 500, man, these short track races have been kind of a disappointment, so it will be interesting to see if Martinsville can cook up any sort of redeeming factor. Now, of course, the same rules as per usual apply in the playoffs for the round of 8, where if you win a race, if a driver wins a race, that driver will automatically qualify for the championship for the final race of the NASCAR Cup Series season in Phoenix Raceway on Sunday, November 10th. So that will be coming up later on in just under a month, actually, if you'd believe it. The NASCAR season is already coming to an end pretty soon. Man, that's crazy. So we have our round of 8, and as I look at the playoff standings, let's see. Who do I think is going to make it to the Final 4? I have Kyle Larson for sure. I have no doubt in my mind that Kyle Larson will make it to the championship 4. You heard it here first on Grand Prix Talk, dear listener, dear viewer on YouTube. You heard it here first. Kyle Larson will go to the championship 4. Now watch this prediction age like milk. Watch somehow Christopher Bell win a race before Kyle Larson does. And then Christopher Bell. To be fair, Christopher Bell making it to the Final 4 would not be such a crazy statement. He did make it last year, and if it weren't for a blown tire, he probably would have done pretty well, if not have won that race or the championship at the very least. And if I'm not wrong, he's been pretty consistent these past few playoff races, so it's not to be understated. Like, honestly, I wouldn't underestimate Christopher Bell here in this case. Like, he really has done some pretty good stuff in the playoffs, if I'm being honest. So I don't think that excuse me. So I don't think I'm going crazy when I say that Christopher Bell might make it to the Final 4. He did make it in 2022 as well. So, the streak maybe continues. We will find out soon enough. Tyler Reddick, maybe, all right? Maybe Tyler Reddick will make it to the Final 4. Excuse me, by the way. I have a little stuff going on in my throat. Okay. So Tyler Reddick, maybe he'll make it to the Final 4. But it would take a kind of a miracle. If anywhere, he might get it at Homestead Miami Speedway. If Tyler Reddick makes it to the Final 4, it's going to be at Homestead. That's my belief if he does win. But then again, the same could be said for William Byron. He has been pretty good at those 1.5 milers, and Byron has won at Homestead before. So one of those two, if we see a playoff driver win at Homestead, it's going to be one of those two for sure. Now, for Ryan Blaney, me personally, I'm not sure if I have him going to the Final 4, just because I'm not sure what to speak of as far as his 1.5 milers go. Maybe he could do some good, maybe in Vegas, but I'm not sure if Miami would necessarily be his strong suit. Denny Hamlin, you know what? We're going to add Denny Hamlin to the possible winner at Homestead because I know for a fact Hamlin has won at Homestead before. What he hasn't won is a championship. So he'll probably make it to the championship four, and then something is going to go wrong at Phoenix. Disappointing. Poor old Denny delivers on YouTube. By the way, check out his channel. He makes great content. Chase Elliott, maybe at Martinsville he'll do it. Maybe. And Joey Logano, shoot. I mean, honestly, these are all really, really good drivers. It is hard to determine which are going to be the final four, but here's my hot take on it. My final four going into Phoenix, my final four are going to be Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, maybe Joey Logano. Either him or Ryan Blaney. One of those two is going to make the final four. But I have Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and Denny Hamlin joining him. You heard it here first on Grand Prix Talk, so make sure you write that down. As a matter of fact, I might write it down after the show, and we will reconvene in about 3 weeks' time when NASCAR heads to Phoenix, and we will decide if those four indeed made it or not. So that will be very fun to find out. Okay, I need a little bit of a breather because I'm starting to feel a little dehydrated, and this show has been a little bit bonkers. So coming up next, most likely the moment you've all been waiting for, we're going to talk about Formula One. That will be after the break, though. We're going to talk about the history of the United States Grand Prix, my predictions for this upcoming weekend in Texas, and let's see, maybe championship predictions, because this championship in F1 is really starting to come down to the wire with about 6 races left or 5. What is it? Yeah, around there. Should be a great championship to the finish. We're going to talk all about that here right on the other side of the break, so stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back to Grand Prix Talk after some Peggy Go with Find a Way. Be right back, y'all. I got to mute. All right, chat, we are back. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We had a lot of mic issues, I'll tell you that much. Anyway, back to the show. Peggy Go with Find the Way, which is a big summer anthem that I had on repeat quite a while during the summer months. Okay, welcome back to Grand Prix Talk, everybody. At long last, we get to talk about Formula One. They've been away for the past month or so. They are back this weekend as if they never left, even though they did. We're just not going to talk about that. Anyway, let's talk about the United States Grand Prix, which is coming up this weekend, if you'd believe it. We have quite a few things to cover here. So the United States Grand Prix, huh? What a race that is. What a great race, honestly. One of my personal favorites all year long, if you'd believe that. But if you also believe it, it has had quite a bizarre history. Now, what exactly do I mean with that? I hear you say. What do you mean the United States Grand Prix was actually a stable race for the past 10 or so years, and definitely not a race that came on and off the Formula One calendar for the better part of 50 years or so? Well, let's talk about that, shall we? The first Formula One Grand Prix in the United States took place on December 12th, 1959. It crowned a Formula One world champion in that same year. Much like Silverstone, the United States Grand Prix in 1959 took place on an Air Force base. Now, let's remember that Silverstone was built on what was once an Air Force base that helped Great Britain defend from Nazi Germany during World War II. Now, Sebring, which is a little track you may have heard of in the state of Florida, was also built on a used Air Force base. The race is best remembered in 1959 as the main win for a young man that you might have heard of. His namesake is now on the Formula One grid. His name is Bruce McLaren. So that was one of the bigger moments. His record as the youngest Grand Prix winner at the age of 22 years old was only broken in 2003 when Fernando Alonso on the expanding Michelin tires lapped Michael Schumacher on his way to his maiden victory at the Hungaroring. That record would stand for quite a while until one Max Verstappen came along at the age of 17. What was I doing at 17 or 18, around there? Anyway, Verstappen remains the youngest driver to have ever won a Formula One race, even to the present day. Now, let's move from Sebring over to a little track called Watkins Glen, which would host Formula One and the United States Grand Prix for the better part of the 60s, including some big race wins with Graham Hill, who is best known for being the first and only driver in the history of motorsports to have won the Triple Crown. That consists of the Indy 500, the Monaco Grand Prix, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Only Graham Hill has done it. He also won 3 consecutive victories in the United States Grand Prix from 1963 to 65. The following year in 1966, Jim Clark gave the 16-cylinder BRM car its only victory in Formula One. The following year, he won it again, the United States Grand Prix, but that was with a Ford Cosworth engine. And let's remember that Ford is coming back to F1 in 2026. It'll be interesting to see if the Blue Oval can repeat victory in their home turf in 2026 or sometime after that. Anyway, later on in 1968, Mario Andretti, you might have heard of that guy. Yeah, he's a pretty good driver if you ask me, just a driver, someone you might have heard of. Anyway, he made his Formula One debut at Watkins Glen, grabbing pole position. He was driving for Lotus. However, he lost that race to Jackie Stewart, who is nowadays considered one of the greatest competitors in Formula One history. In 1969, Watkins Glen continued its pretty good run with Formula One. And in 1970, Emerson Fittipaldi had moved from Brazil to England. In 1969, he won at Watkins Glen in 1970. There was one major downside to this, however, to this pretty solid run of F1 at Watkins Glen. And that was the fact that there actually were some deaths at that very same track. In 1973, in 1973, Super Sweet Lotus driver Ronnie Peterson won that year's race. However, Stewart's teammate Severt was actually killed in a practice session earlier that same weekend, which is a huge bummer. The race was going to be the 100th and final start for JYS. He did not start as Tyrrell, the team he was driving for, actually withdrew from the race, which, and that wasn't the only time that tragedy struck in Watkins Glen. Tragedy struck again when young Austrian driver Helmut Koenig, who was driving for John Surtees, suffered a fatal crash as well. So, unfortunately, Watkins Glen also has a dark side as far as its history with F1 goes. However, things finally did start to get brighter for the Glen, as Niki Lauda, if you know who that guy is, he celebrated his first championship title by winning the 1975 season finale at Watkins Glen for Ferrari. This was Scuderia Ferrari's first Formula One success in the United States. For the next 2 years, however, it would be James Hunt. Maybe you've heard of that little rivalry, Niki Lauda versus James Hunt. James Hunt would step on the podium, at the top step of the podium, in 1976 and 77. He was driving for McLaren. Ferrari would see victory again at the Glen, but that was with a driver named James Roneman. Sorry, not James Roneman. Anyway, yeah. Gilles Villeneuve was also driving that year. He won for Ferrari again in 1979. So, yeah, that was pretty solid stuff. Eventually, Watkins Glen lost its place on the Formula One calendar, losing it to a little street circuit called Long Beach, California. Gee, I wonder where I've heard that before. That's right. That's where we're coming at you from for Grand Prix Talk. So an English travel agent named Chris Pook booked the return of Formula One to California, specifically here in the streets of beautiful Long Beach, California. It was round 3 of the 1976 Formula One World Championship, and this one was called the United States Grand Prix West. So whilst Watkins Glen was still hosting their race, Formula One added a second United States race. I wonder where I've heard that before. It's definitely not like Circuit of the Americas was later paired up with the Miami International Autodrome, a street circuit on a coastal city. Moving on. Anyway, in 1977, Mario Andretti became the first and to this day the only American to win a Formula One Grand Prix on home soil. This was in Long Beach, California. In 1980, Nelson Piquet would win it for Brabham. This was his first of 23 Grand Prix wins. His son, Nelson Piquet Jr., would win a Formula E race in the mid-2010s, also on the streets of Long Beach. The final Formula One race in the streets of Long Beach took place in 1983, where McLaren drivers John Watson and Niki Lauda made a remarkable recovery after a disappointing performance in qualifying. They would finish first and second. From the beautiful streets of Southern California, our own home turf here for Grand Prix Talk and Smarter Sports, let's move over to the Motor City. That's right. Let's go to Detroit, where 3 Grand Prix were held. This was actually the 3rd Grand Prix to be held in the United States, because in 1982, there was 3 of them. Watkins Glen, Long Beach, and Detroit. The inaugural Detroit Grand Prix saw John Watson, on the advice of Michelin Competitions director Pierre Dupasquier, made it look elementary, changing his tire compound during a red flag period, and went on to take victory from a starting place of 17th on the grid. Local driver Eddie Cheever, who we know best as a commentator for ESPN on ABC during the Indy 500 back in the mid-2010s as well, he was second, and Didier Pironi was third for Ferrari. So yeah, we have quite a few. And by the way, I'm only covering 3 out of many locations that the United States Grand Prix was held. Phoenix was another one, Phoenix, Arizona, which is notorious for its desert-like heat, maybe because it is in a desert. And unfortunately, this actually took a huge toll on some drivers. One of them was Nigel Mansell, and it was not good. It was not good. The Grand Prix in Phoenix, in the burning but it's dry heat of Arizona, is best remembered for attracting less spectators than the ostrich races in the city around the same time. I'm not kidding. This is literally this is quoted from GrandPrix247.com. And I thought Josh Revel was joking when he said that in his YouTube video regarding the U.S. Grand Prix. But I guess not. It really did happen. An ostrich race attracted more people through the gates than freaking Formula One. That is a first. That is insane. The Phoenix F1 Festival failed to rise to old Bernie Ecclestone's expectations and that of his local promoters. This race lasted only 3 editions, with McLaren Honda winning all of them. And yes, as I said, Nigel Mansell actually collapsed after one of those runnings of the race. There's actually a photo of it, and it looks pretty brutal. So I'm glad he was able to recover from that one because that was not good. Then, of course, there was the notorious Caesars Palace Grand Prix in Las Vegas, Nevada. The first edition, quote Grand Prix 247.com, Beni Vidi Noviki. We came, we saw, we did not conquer Las Vegas, Nevada. The 1981 Caesars Palace Grand Prix was the season finale. It was held for another 3 races after that, 1982, 1983, and 1984. But after that, if you believe it, that IndyCar actually took over after F1 left Caesars Palace because, it wasn't really bringing in too many people. It just wasn't. Anyway, the 1982 season finale marked victory number 1 for Alboreto, for a driver named Alboreto in his Tyrrell, and crowning Keke Rosberg as the first Finnish world champion after finishing only 1 race all season long. Don't ask me how that one happened. The race was also the final Formula One event of Mario Andretti's career. Sin City would not see the return of Formula One until 2023, which we will talk about the 2024 edition of the race closer to the big race in November. Dallas was another city that hosted Formula One. It's going to host IndyCar starting in 2026. Here at 22 West, we have a Dallas Cowboys fan, so I hope he realizes that Dallas also hosted an F1 race. Do that to me no more, says Dallas. A one-hit blunder. That's a good way to describe the Dallas racetrack. Extreme heat, the track breaking up, cars on track at 7 a.m., which led one driver named Jacques Lafitte to show up in his pajamas. That was before the race, by the way. The end of the race saw Nigel Mansell pushing and collapsing near the finish line. The winner was Keke Rosberg, who had looks more of a Texas gun sling, if you'd ask me. And from there, we moved to Indianapolis. It sounds, all these cities that I'm naming out and their history with F1, you'd think that I'm naming out some big artist U.S. tour. Beep-a-doobie, anybody? Anyway, now let's move to Indianapolis, Indiana. And we got to start with Tony George, the man who single-handedly destroyed American Open while racing in the mid-90s. There was something good that he did. He brought back Formula One to the United States. And more specifically, the big house itself, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is now, of course, the host of the Indy 500. Anyway, it took a lot of years of negotiations with old Bernie Ecclestone, but the year 2000 saw the United States Grand Prix take place in Indianapolis. An infield road section was built specifically for F1, and the cars raced along the front stretch and part of the section between turns 1 and 2 as per the Indy 500 configuration. Now, this was actually a pretty solid start. We had the first race on September 24, 2000, with over 250,000 spectators on race day. It was really something cool. They went off without a hitch. David Coulthard led the first 6 laps in his McLaren. Then it was old Michael Schumacher, leading all the way to lap 73, followed by his teammate Rubens Barrichello. So it was actually pretty good. The 2001 race was held on September 30th, only a few weeks after the terrorist attacks of September the 11th. Schumacher took pole position, but had to settle for second place, settling behind Mika Hakkinen. The second McLaren driver of David Coulthard was third, while Pablo Montoya set the fastest lap of the race in his BMW Williams. 2003 saw Kimi Räikkönen start from pole position in his McLaren. Schumacher was 7th on the grid. Kimi had to settle for second, whilst Heinz-Harald Frentzen stepped on the podium in his 3rd place for the last time in his career. Schumacher, by the way, did go on to win that one. In 2004, the U.S. Grand Prix was moved up the calendar and took place in June, following the month of May for the Indy 500. And once again, we saw Rubens Barrichello take pole position and set the fastest lap, but the Red Baron of Schumacher still flew by on lap 50 to take victory. A little man named Takuma Sato, who is now a 2-time Indy 500 champion, he found his fair share of success in the U.S. Grand Prix, finishing in 3rd in the 2004 edition of the race. Unfortunately, now we got to talk about the 2005 race, a race that will live in infamy. The day Bibendum went bust. Formula One and politics travel side by side at high speed on and off the racetracks all over the world, and they clashed with each other at Indianapolis in 2005, following 2 tire failures on Toyota cars leading up to race day, which is another reason why them coming back is so significant. Michelin pleaded to add a chicane before the very fast final corner, and the French manufacturer was even willing to charter a Boeing 747 to bring a different compound. Max Mosley, the brilliant barrister he was, laid down the law and refused to budge, told all the teams to bug off, resulting in a 6-car U.S. Grand Prix in 2005 as several other cars, all of them wearing Michelin tires, had to pull into the pits after the formation lap, including pole sitter Jarno Trulli for Toyota. Rubens Barrichello and Michael Schumacher galloped to an easy 1-2 with Schumacher winning that race for Ferrari. Man of the moment was Portuguese driver Tiago Monteiro. Driving the Jordan Toyota, he could not believe his luck as he became the first and only to this day so far, the only Portuguese driver to stand on a Formula One podium. Even to this day, I'll bet he's still smiling. 2005 was the catalyst, basically. Formula One continued to host races in Indianapolis only for another 3 years after that. At the end of the 2008 race, F1 decided to leave Indianapolis forever, basically. Leaving Indianapolis, they also left the United States, and it looked like that was going to be that way forever. Until 2012, when they showed up and built Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Needless to say, that has been a huge success for F1. The 2021 race brought in over 400,000 spectators on race day. It was truly a spectacular weekend for them. In 2022, of course, we know they added the Miami Grand Prix, which is not the U.S. Grand Prix, but it is in the U.S. And then, of course, 2023, they added the Las Vegas Grand Prix. So, needless to say, I think Formula One is really starting to find their fitting here in the United States, now adding 3 Grand Prix to the schedule. And this weekend, they're headed to Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas for the 2024 United States Grand Prix. It is the 11th time that they will host the race there. The one time that they didn't was 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, yeah, we're in for a pretty good weekend. We have a sprint race coming up this weekend. So, I'll break down the schedule for you. Practice 1, by the way, all times for YouTube viewers and for my radio stream, all the times that I'm going to describe for this breakdown of the schedule are Pacific Daylight. So practice 1 will be on Friday, October 18th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight. Sprint qualifying will be at 2:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight. We have a sprint race coming up this weekend. It'll be broadcast at 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight on Saturday, October 19th, followed by Grand Prix qualifying at 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight. The big race, the United States Grand Prix, will see lights out at 12 noon Pacific Daylight Time. That is 2 o'clock in Texas. I was there last year. I'm telling you, it was actually pretty darn fun, if you ask me. The race will take place over the course of 56 laps on a 5.513 kilometer Circuit of the Americas. Should be in for a pretty interesting weekend of racing. Coming back from the break, let's actually refresh ourselves with the driver standings. Going into the U.S. Grand Prix, Max Verstappen actually still holds the lead of the championship with 331 points. Lando Norris is in second place, but catching up quick with 279 points. And Charles Leclerc with 245, he sits in third place respectively. Looking at the track and just seeing how this schedule has played out, I'm willing to bet that McLaren should be in for a good day, if I'm being honest. Just looking at the past 2 circuits, Singapore and Azerbaijan, where they had long straightaways and some really tight turns. Granted, Coda's turns might not be like super narrow either. They actually have some pretty wide turns, but I do see how McLaren could definitely excel at a track like this. If I had to lay down like a wild card, well, P1 from Matt and Tommy, Matthew Gallagher from P1 with Matt and Tommy, he actually has Max Verstappen winning the race. If you look at his predictions on the thumbnail, hey, Max Verstappen race winner, I'm not sure. Maybe he can do it, but it won't come easy, especially with McLaren on such insane form right now. Let's remember that out of the last 5 races that have occurred, McLaren have won 1, 2, 3 of them. 3 out of the last 5 races, a McLaren driver has come first place. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc were the other 2 drivers not driving a McLaren who won the last 2 races. So I think McLaren is definitely in for a solid weekend. But if anyone can challenge, maybe Max Verstappen. Maybe. It will not come easy, though. And quite frankly, I'm very excited for this weekend. I hope you guys are as well. Let's find out real quick, where can I watch the US Grand Prix? Because surely you don't have, because if you don't have F1 TV Pro, well, not to worry. It looks like this year's edition is going to be on ABC, which is a local channel. So for us here in Los Angeles County, tune into ABC Channel 7 at 12 noon Pacific Daylight Time. That's when you'll be able to watch the US Grand Prix. Additional coverage of practice sessions and qualifying will be on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus. And of course, on F1 TV Pro. Should be in for a great weekend of racing in Texas for sure. All right, that's going to do it for this weekend, for this week's edition of Grand Prix Talk, the United States Grand Prix special. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And YouTube stream, thank you additionally, especially because y'all had to deal with me having to fix this mic and everything. Really, thank you all for your patience. And thank you all for tuning in. It was good to spend a little time with you guys today. And make sure you tune into the US Grand Prix. Next week on the show, we will be breaking down that race. And we should be in for a pretty good episode. Don't forget to check out, coming up later on this afternoon, the birthday episode of Self-Centered Radio at 6 o'clock Pacific time. So if you're tuning in on 22westmedia.com, stay tuned. 6 o'clock, Self-Centered Radio, the birthday episode is coming up. So don't forget to tune into that. Anyway, from all of us here at Grand Prix Talk, my name is Sergio Morales. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Grand Prix Talk. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at 22WestLB. Follow me on Instagram at Smorstagram, SMORstagram. And tune in next week. We'll break down the United States Grand Prix and everything in between. So thank you all. We'll see you guys next week on Grand Prix Talk. This has been Sergio Morales signing off. Till next week.